Welcome to Sometimes Love Isn't Enough, the Parenting Through Challenges podcast. I am your host, Angie Grandt, Generational Healing Specialist. And for today's episode, I want to talk about kids who come to us with tricky backgrounds. And I know that this episode may or may not apply to your family or your circumstances, but perhaps it applies to yourself or somebody important in your relationship, or perhaps it applies to someone close to you and their family dynamics. So, for the parent who is struggling to connect with their kiddo because their kiddo has had a tricky past, this episode is for you. So, if you've been following my podcast for a while, you perhaps know or have gathered that I am an adoptive mom. I'm also a biological mom, a grandma, and all kinds of other things. But really, in this episode, I want to talk about the kids who come to us or who have experienced things even in our own home, things that we ourselves perhaps can't wrap our heads around. And I want to talk with you about my experience as someone who knows so much about behaviors and trauma and behavior management. And yet I just kept feeling like I was failing. And my mind knew where the behaviors were coming from. My mind knew that when I was seeing behaviors in my home, that they could be explained by tricky past, a tricky or a series of tricky events in a child's life. I knew that. My brain knew that. But my nervous system was still reacting to the behaviors that I saw. My nervous system was still reacting to what I perceived were threats in my home. And sometimes, if I'm being quite honest, there were actual real verbal or physical threats. And I'm not saying that to I don't know, speak ill of anybody. But I know as I describe some of the situations that I've been through, and I definitely dance around it, right? Because the story that I'm sharing comes from my heart, from my experience, but I'm also well aware that my son was having an experience as well. And so was my daughter, and so was my partner, and so was my son's dad, my ex, right? We were all having this experience through our own lenses. And so I do sometimes dance around describing the behaviors in a public forum like this because I don't ever want it to be a reflection of him because I know when kids come from trauma, from disrupted attachments, from experiences that were out of their control, I know it has an impact on the way that we see the world. It has an impact on the way that our kids show up. And yet, here were these behaviors that to people in my life, they would describe them as horrible or atrocious or unsettling, or would ask me, how bad does it have to get before you send him back? Like there's some place to send him back to, right? And my mind, my mouth kept explaining that these behaviors were explainable from what had happened to his nervous system. And yet, while I was explaining that, my own nervous system was developing its own reactive path to those very same behaviors. So, what does this look like in a home? It looks like a child who initially we as parents can love on them and be compassionate when they're having meltdowns or when they're being destructive or when they're hurting themselves or others. It looks like initially, when we have the capacity, we can show up for our kids if we have the right tools in our tool belt. And I felt like I did. But over time, my nervous system took the behaviors as evidence of a perceived threat. Or at least that's how I look at it now when I look back. I didn't know this in the moment. In the moment, my my mind kept telling the same story that these behaviors are coming from his past. But my nervous system was building this new story that my body was reacting to. And this new story was a deviation from the track of understanding that the behaviors were a reflection of trauma. And instead, what my nervous system was doing was creating this new story that I was living out. And this story went something like this: You weren't safe in your own home. He's not safe. I can't keep him safe. I was afraid of the past, the present, and the future. And my nervous system was reacting accordingly. To me, in my body, when my nervous system was reacting to these perceived threats, to this fear-based parenting that I was experiencing, what was happening in my nervous system is that I was becoming increasingly stressed. I was becoming increasingly reactive. And I was using my tools to be responsive in the moment, to keep my cool, to be the calm in the storm. But it got harder and harder and harder. And so what was happening inside of my body was that parts of my body were trying to tell me that I was overstressed, overwhelmed. It came out in an exacerbation in some significant issues in my spinal cord, in my nervous system. It came out in many more challenges with eating a variety of foods. It came out in an increased level of anxiety. And I don't feel like I had ever really been an anxious person. But I would notice more and more. I think I described a few episodes ago how, like, seeing my phone ring while I was at work. And if the school district came up on my phone, my whole body would have this rush of hormones ready to fight, flight, or flee. And it was just a phone call. But my whole nervous system was reacting to this perceived threat. And it seems silly to look back unless you've been in my shoes or similar shoes, right? It seems silly to look back and think like, really, a phone call was sending you into fight or flight mode? Yeah, it was. Because my mind didn't even have time to think about what I was afraid of or what I was worried about. My nervous system was like, hey, we've got this. You take care of the logistics. We'll pump out all the hormones that you need to take care of this threat. Because I didn't have tools to actually help regulate myself when I was dealing with one of the most stressful things that I've ever experienced in my life. My smart, logical brain knew, and yet my nervous system overpowered. Because that's what it's supposed to do. Nothing went wrong with me. And I am clear about that, right? Like, I'm not sharing this. I'm not sharing this because I want sympathy for what I went through or what my son went through. I'm sharing this because I know that in sharing my story, I have the power to help you or help someone that you care about to shift the trajectory of your nervous system and to break this pattern. Because my son needed me to be present and connected. And my nervous system is designed, just like yours, to react to danger. But there wasn't, in most situations, there wasn't an imminent threat to danger. There were definitely some hairy moments in there, don't get me wrong. But in most circumstances, my nervous system was way overreacting. But I didn't know that. It felt very real to me because it was real in my body. But when we know this, when we know and can identify what's happening physiologically in our bodies, then we get to make a choice. I was doing this by default because it's how we're designed. It's how we are all designed to have this beautiful system that kicks in when we need it to. But mine was kicking in, and maybe yours is kicking in when you don't need it to. It's like you're always ready to run from the tiger, but you live in the suburbs. There will maybe never be a tiger there, right? But your nervous system doesn't know that. It doesn't believe that. So what do we do about this? I mean, to me, the obvious answer is to use a tool that gets you back in touch with your body, that gets you grounded in the present moment. For some, meditation is that tool. And I've been listening more and more to some experts in the field about the power of meditation. And I haven't given it enough time. I haven't practiced it enough to feel like I have really honed in on the power of meditation. So I'll be super honest about that. It's one of those things that I've tried and I'm not great at it. And then I'm hard on myself because I'm not great at it, except it's the same as running a 5K, right? Like if I tried a couple times, I'm not going to be any good at it. Yeah, it requires persistence and practice and giving yourself grace for not being perfect at it. It's the same is true for meditation as it is for running a 5K or a marathon or whatever, whatever that thing is that you don't yet know how to do. It doesn't mean that you're not capable. It just means it's new. So I'll be super honest to say I haven't yet given meditation uh, the good old college try. I have done it on occasion. I have employed other tools that I find give me the same results in a way that works for me. But I'm actively working on pulling meditation into my practice as well, because I don't think that there is one tool that can do everything for us. And I think each tool gets at different parts of our story and helping us shift that. So this is my friendly nudge for you to consider building meditation into your day. And I can hear you saying right now, how in the heck am I going to find time to meditate when the kids need my attention, when the house needs my attention, when my job needs my attention? How in the world can I find time to meditate? Well, I can't decide that for you, but what I do know is that when we're being really, really honest with ourselves, we we often are blind to what is really available to us because we all get the same 24 hours in a day. And there's some people who maximize that time not only for, creating and doing, but also for connecting and grounding and also resting. And then there are people who, put in their 8 hours of work a day and then they're exhausted. And it seems like when we're stuck in that rut of feeling exhausted over and over again, that that's the only choice in life. But I want to reassure you that that's just the only choice that you see right now today. And what if there are other options available to you that are actually easier than what you're doing right now? I find this oftentimes in my coaching practice that I'll be working with parents and they feel like, or they express to me that trying a new behavior strategy is going to be more work. It's going to be harder than what they're already doing. The thought of adding something else onto their plate is exhausting. Just the thought is exhausting. But when we really dig down and make a plan and then start doing parenting differently in the way that I support parents to do, they find that it's actually much easier because we tend to expend a ridiculous amount of time, energy, creativity. We kind of waste it on complaining and worrying about not having enough time or stressing over things that we can't control instead of allowing what's going to happen and really putting our focus not on the things we can't control, not on the things that are causing us stress, but really putting our focus on the things that we want to happen, the things that we want to improve or change or grow. When we really can do that and let go, really, really let go the things that we can't control and that aren't bringing us happiness, we spend so much less energy and get such greater results towards our goal. Because when we're so focused on what we don't want, well, then we're adding fuel to the fire, essentially. Versus when we let that go and let it be, and we focus on what we do want happening, that thing grows. You can watch this happen more practically with your kids, right? If you're trying to work from home or work on a project and the kids are playing and they're trying to get attention because we're all designed to need connection. Your kids aren't being bad, they're not being needy. They're fulfilling their human need that we all have. When our kids are doing things to get our attention and we yell at them, we get frustrated with them, we lose focus on what we're working on because we're so just irritated that our kids need so much of our time, we end up spending a significant amount more of time and energy and our own resources on tending to those problem behaviors as we perceive them than we would if we took the time out to actually genuinely be present and connected with our kiddos, and then let the things that they're doing that drive us nuts to really decide, is it really necessary to let it drive us nuts? Is it really necessary to attend to those things? And I'm not saying ignore your kids, but when we can fill our kids' cups with the attention and the connection that they need, they're less likely to constantly be trying to get it in whatever way works for them, right? I think we've all heard as parents that any attention is good attention to kids sometimes, which is true. Humans need connection. And if if we haven't figured out, or if trying to get it in a more positive way isn't working for us, well, then we'll do ridiculous things to get that connection anyways. Because some connection feels better than feeling abandoned or feeling alone. And so I think that's such a beautiful example of how when we focus on what we want, which is having a stronger connection with our kids, and we give them attention for that, it will take us so much less time than it does to attend to not only their negative attention seeking behaviors, but also then we're giving so much attention to our perpetuating frustration and irritation and annoyance and not getting our work done. So it takes us, significantly longer to get it done. I encourage you to take notice of that over the next week or so and really notice those things that you're giving negative attention to, negative energy to, and how much more of your time in your day does that take versus being a bit of a mind ninja and choosing that you don't want to focus on whatever that thing is anymore, and you really want to shift your focus to something that lights you up. It's wild how you'll see a significant difference in the amount of time that you need to spend on that thing when you focus on what you want. So when I think about trying to attend to self-care, trying to pull in tools to help regulate ourselves, take that concept and really evaluate your day and how you're using your time. Are there pockets in your day where perhaps you get a lunch hour at work and maybe you currently sit at your desk and you continue working through work because you feel like the task list will never end, but you have an hour or 45 minutes or a half hour to yourself and you're choosing to stay at your desk? What if you instead found a nice tree to hang out under and meditated or journaled or did some tapping or something that helps you to take care of you? Or what if you got up 45 minutes before anybody else in the family does and found a quiet place to take care of something for you? How would that change your day if you were to create time in your schedule that's dedicated just to you? Because when I look back over my parenting journey with my son, all of the strategies were around attending to his behaviors and what to do about his behaviors. And I know I've shared this before, but the only strategy recommended to me was that if I was feeling overwhelmed, I could seek a therapist. And after several years, I did. And I found it to be, and I don't mean this as a discredit to therapy, right? Because I think I had a bad match, but I found it to be a waste of my time. And again, I'm not saying that therapy is, so don't take the wrong message there. But that experience for me, I tried it a few times and I I got nothing out of it. I felt like the session was more for her, the therapist, and it wasn't about me. And yes, that was again not a good match for me, but that idea of perhaps seeking therapy wasn't necessarily designed at helping to regulate me either. Maybe I would have found a therapist who had those tools in their tool belt to help regulate me. But I now know that there are so many different ways to help calm your nervous system to break those patterns. Because it is the pattern that ultimately ended up being the biggest problem in our relationship and with his behaviors, right? Like, I can't change his past. I can't change what's in his nervous system, but I had so much more power over my own nervous system. I didn't have this awareness then, but I have this awareness for you, and I'm sharing it with you. We can't change what has happened to our kids. It is awful, the things that some kids go through. And we can't change what has happened, but we get so much authority over how we show up, how we are present, how we take care of our own nervous system, not only so we can be present for our kids, but also so that we can show them how to do it too. I think about, I didn't really have self-care tools in my tool belt in my parenting journey. And I didn't have models in my life growing up who did that either. And so when I was feeling wonky and out of sorts and overwhelmed, I had no idea what to pull from, which meant that I really had no idea how to help my son to regulate his nervous system either, because it wasn't a skill that I possessed. And imagine if you had tools to not only keep yourself in a more regulated state so that when the shit does hit the fan, you're better able to respond. Not only for you to keep your sanity, but also for them so that you can show them, like, yes, this is really scary right now. This is stressful. This is overwhelming. Let's do something about that instead of attending to the behaviors. That, when I think about where I was a few years ago, working in a field where our focus was on behaviors and where I am now, that is the difference. Is that I think so much of our parent training is on how to address the behaviors instead of really looking at what is underneath the surface and how do we address that, right? We see a child lying, we see a child stealing, or using Sharpie all over the walls, or dumping all your, fancy salon shampoo down the drain, right? These are the behaviors we see, and our reaction and our training is designed to address the behavior problem and to teach kids, cause and effect and consequences for their behaviors. But their behaviors really are a reflection of an unmet need. Their behaviors really are a reflection of changes that have happened at a deep, deep level to their nervous system and how they know how to handle stressors. And I couldn't identify this back then, but I can now when I look back at the behaviors that I saw with my son. And I see this too across the board with the clients that I serve, with friends sharing stories. When our kids are misbehaving, as we call it, when we can really look at that behavior through the lens of human design, look at through the lens of mistaken motivations and really ask ourselves better questions. Because I think our current question is, why in the heck would they do that? Don't they know better? Those are the questions that we think, we sometimes ask, or we state in even less compassionate, reactive ways. But instead, what we really should be asking is, whoa, what is the unmet need that fueled my child to respond or react that way? What need wasn't met that I need to help them figure out how to meet it so that that behavior doesn't happen again? Because when we keep addressing the behavior problems as we see them, and we're not addressing the unmet need underneath, well, the behavior will continue and your nervous system will continue to be chipped away at. So then, if you are using amazing regulation tools, if the behaviors continue or get worse, your nervous system will respond or react accordingly. Your nervous system will do what it's designed to do. And so I want to be clear that when I think about this topic for this episode about when our kids come to us with a tricky past and they're displaying these sometimes atrocious behaviors, we cannot just look at what's underneath their behaviors without taking care of us. And we cannot just take care of us without really looking underneath the behaviors. It can't be an either or, it has to be both. Because if we don't have both of those key elements, right? Us being taken care of and them being seen and acknowledged and supported for those unmet needs, then the system to support our kids, to decrease behaviors, to build stronger connections, that system just can't work very well, if at all. So if we want to change our kids' behaviors, we want to change our relationship with our kids, having those two key elements in play at all times is necessary. And I would be so bold as to say, like, this applies to all kids across the board. I know today I was talking about our kids coming to us with tricky behaviors, but all humans have some basic needs above and beyond, food, shelter, clothing, right? Like those are very basic human needs. But we also have these needs to feel like we belong somewhere. We have a need to feel like we matter, like we're loved and lovable just for who we are. We need to feel like we have power over our own life, or at least some say. And we see these needs coming out in our kids at a very young age, sometimes around 1 or 2, that we'll see these needs come out of our kids. And when they get even a little shadow of a doubt about one of these things, we see it come out as behaviors. I see this happen every day in my home with the adults and with the toddlers. When there are unmet human needs, people misbehave to try to get their needs met. Sometimes people learn what those needs are, and then they get better at articulating what those needs are. But oftentimes, as humans, we don't. And so when we think about all of our kids, whether they came from a tricky past or not, when we think about all of our kids and what they really need from us, they need us to see them. They need us to ask better questions, and they need us to take care of our own nervous system and not expect our kids to behave so that our nervous system is happier. That isn't their job. It never was, and it never will be. So this is my challenge for you over the next week is to really start noticing one. My first challenge for you was to notice those things that you're giving undue service to, undue attention, undue frustration, negativity, whatever it might be, and do a little experiment. Take that thing that just irritates you, whether it's, your kids craving attention or something on TV, and you get to make a choice to change the way you're thinking about that. And sometimes it's not so easy to change the way we think, right? Our thoughts are deeply rooted, but it is always possible. It might not seem like it initially, but it is always possible to change your thoughts. But you have to decide you want to first. So that's my first challenge for you is to find that thing, to start to notice how you have more power over your thoughts than you realize. My second challenge for you is to notice in your daily routine when you could create more time for you for self-care and whatever that looks like. Tapping, meditation, journaling, going on a walk in nature, listening to the birds, whatever you connect with, I I challenge you to find time in your weekly routine to build that in, to notice those pockets of time that you were perhaps doing things that weren't serving you before. Because it's there. That time is there. I feel confident about that. And then my last challenge for you. So three challenges this week. So you're welcome. But my last challenge for you this week is to ask better questions. When your child is doing something that drives you nuts or they're misbehaving, really think about the question you ask. And can you reframe that question to what is that unmet need that I'm not noticing right? And what can I do about that? So, if you need support with these tools, with any of the tools that I've shared here, this is the work that I do. I love helping parents to break these cycles that aren't serving them anymore. I I know that I'm here on this planet to take what I've learned and help parents do it better because our kids need us to. We see evidence all around us that our kids need us to put on our big girl and big boy pants and do this different for them. They need us to show up differently and break our own cycles so that we can show up for them. So I would love to help you with your family and connecting with your family. So when you're ready, uh, check out my links. I offer a free consult, or you can just book a session too. So until next time, keep connecting.